I want to welcome to the program somebody that we've had him on before, but we've been following everything in this race because it's one of the most important. Dr. Oz, welcome to the studio. Welcome to Ruthless.
Thank you, Josh. I'm surprised I got in here. The gauntlet of security. It's a remarkable experience to run for politics. For those of you listening who have not done it yet, it's something that
is it highly recommended?
I would definitely do it. It's a thrill, but it's like lighting a dumpster fire in someone's house every day and knowing they're going to do the same back to you. It's sometimes it's like fifth grade, and generally it's incredibly insightful about human nature, about how people make decisions. And in my race in particular, which I know they'll write books about, it's a lot of bizarre turns.
No kidding. I mean, no kidding. Listen, last time we talked to you, it was pre-primary. You were sort of getting the hang of this thing. You'd obviously never been a politician before. You've been in the public spotlight for a long time. But you were sort of building blocks, right, to get to a point where ultimately you now find yourself, which is September, within striking distance of winning a general election, holding a Republican majority in the Senate, and hopefully being able to do good things beyond that. There was a Trafalgar poll that came out last week that showed now you're inching in within 2 points.
Yeah. I think we're going to win this election because voters are focused on kitchen table issues. Yeah. And this is probably the biggest lesson for me. Don't get distracted. There's a lot of mudslinging. There's a lot of mudding of the water for that reason. So it gets opaque. You can't quite tell exactly what they're trying to do, and they probably feel the same about me. But the voters are very clear on what they need. And it's about them, and it should be about them. You know, when they're sitting at the kitchen table and they're realizing in Pennsylvania, for example, that they're spending $650 extra per month because of inflation, and they're upset about it, how do you tell them that you can help with that problem, give them confidence and hope that you can actually address it? When they're worried about crime, which is the highest murder rate ever in Philadelphia's history was last year, and we'll beat it this year, that's a good reason to get on that issue and talk to them about what's gone wrong with radical left policies that have led to these problems. And by the way, many of them espoused by my opponents.
I was just going to say, if there's ever a better contrast, it's on that issue right there. Because, I mean, this guy essentially wants to empty the prisons.
Well, he's the most pro-murderer candidate in America.
That's a factual statement. This is someone who has multiple times recommended folks who have committed murder be released. Multiple times.
And if you get into the details of the cases, they're reprehensible. There's a gentleman, I'll just go just as an example. There's a gentleman who murdered his girlfriend's mother with scissors. A violent act. Obviously, it's first-degree murder. The jury finds him guilty. That's how our American system works. The judge sentences him to life in prison. In prison, he learned yoga. I do yoga. Right? And Fetterman said it doesn't square with him that someone who does yoga and studying horticulture could have done this.
Come on.
So he wanted to release him.
It's just like the act of yoga was such
get out of jail card.
Mitigating circumstance.
I mean, seriously, how could someone who's doing yoga really have done this thing? Meanwhile, of course, the Attorney General, Josh Shapiro, who's running for governor now, says there's no way he's getting out. And they have several cases like this. This is an ongoing issue where Fetterman says, I'm going to come after you. I'm going to primary you in the governor's race because I'm so big and powerful if you don't let these guys go free. And the average person in Pennsylvania had no idea this was happening. Now they're, of course, being informed about this, and it's very alarming to them because Fetterman, continually has empathy for the criminal over the innocent. Mm-hmm. If you're trying to release, he has 2 people on his staff now who are convicted murderers, again in life for prison, who, again, he cares
on
more
staff?
On staff. I mean,
really putting his money where his mouth is.
And I think your campaign staff should be reflective of the population of your Commonwealth, in my case, my state. And this is just not what we're witnessing. And he doesn't really have good ideas that explain it either. He likes to tweet things out. And in 140 characters, you can see some pretty cool things that sound rational on first glance, but they don't result in success.
It's like bumper sticker type stuff, right?
Bumper sticker candidacy. And I was in Kensington this week, that's where Rocky did his running, right? And, it used to be a reasonable part of Philadelphia.
I saw a video of you down there. That was incredible.
Well, the Democrats don't go to Kensington, which is the largest open-air drug market in America. Why don't they go? Because they're ashamed of it. Their policies, which are Fetterman's policies, open border, which lets fentanyl in as much as you want, legalization of all drugs, which he wants, heroin injection sites, right? If you do those things, you end up with Kensington.
Right.
You enable people to put their life at risk every day because of their addiction, and you feel good about it because you have virtue signaled that you care about caring. And I argued when I was down there that as a surgeon, I care about fixing. Right? You don't want your doctor coming in there and telling you how nice a person your mother was, right? And we wish we could have done more for her, but I really cared about her as she took her last gasps of breath. No, you want to save the lady's life. Do your job. And we have to have political leaders who are willing to make the brave decisions. In the case of addiction, the right thing to do is to take a person who's every day trying to kill themselves off the streets, put them in detox, get them in the rehab, fund it, but push for it and squeeze people into those. Otherwise, you end up with homeless environments where there's lots of drugs and the local homeowners can't go home. Shops shut down, the tax base evaporates, and everyone looks around and wonders what happened. It's not rocket science.
Right.
Exactly. No, I think I actually read about, was this a stop where at the end of it, you actually had multiple people who came up to you and said that they were suffering from addiction, want help, and you got them into treatment?
Yes. This part was completely spontaneous, but drug addicts watch television. So they had seen my show. So they knew I was a doctor, and I've done a lot of work around addiction. So a couple came up, and one woman, her name, Jessica's her name, she said, last week I died. Last week I overdosed. Because, the fentanyl in the drugs that they sell on the streets you have no idea what the dosing is. We use fentanyl to put patients to sleep for heart surgery. Right. It's a really powerful drug. So she died. They gave her Narcan, saved her life, and she realized she was at the end. And you see the exhaustion in their eyes. The divine spark starts to go out. They just want someone to do something. And your job, if you really care about humanity, is be the safety net for each other. And so, I've been down to Kensington multiple times. I gathered a bunch of addicts who had come to the end and took them to a facility that puts them in the detox. That's how you save lives. It's the right thing to do. It's not sexy. Right? I'm not letting people do what they want to do. I'm not being, freewheeling with other people's money or destroying a neighborhood by being weak on basic decisions. But as I have often told my friends, my mom has Alzheimer's. If she was walking across the street right outside the studio here and a car was about to hit her, I would hope each of you would take a chance and get her off the street. Now, strictly speaking, you've arrested her. You've stopped her from doing what she wanted to do. It was still the right thing to do. And our family values should make us brave enough to do the right thing, even though we might get some harsh articles written about us in the press for interfering with people's free will.
It's just so well said.
And that's the thing about being a doctor is you have to make tough decisions and tell people the truth. And being a politician, you tell people what they want to hear.
Yeah.
You think they take liberties? I don't know.
Has that been hard for you? It's just such a different profession than being a doctor.
It's polar opposites, except I'll tell you, it's very similar to surgery, but it's just bloodier.
Yeah.
You learn early on that you do have to actually say the truth. Because people hold you accountable for it. You might focus on different things in different places, but you better be very clear who you are. And I think a lot of campaigns are destroyed early on because you haven't done that deep soul searching. I'm actually very impressed by the people that I meet in this space. These, in my case, I had a pretty good life. I was, enjoying myself and aware of some of the problems and vocal about some of them. But when COVID hit, I began to appreciate the impact of an overarching government that was willing to do whatever it thought it needed to do to trample your civil liberties, but also dictate what needed to happen and not give you any opportunity to question it. And when you censor people, which is what happened during COVID, you didn't let doctors tell their insights about what was going on. They get angry.
When you undermine people's confidence in the process.
Yeah, because you are undermining it.
Right.
Because the process is undermining.
Yeah.
And then I remember fighting for schools and keeping them open because there wasn't any evidence that closing schools where little kids are definitely benefited would make a society safer.
And we have data on that across the world now. And we're going to be feeling the ramifications of what we did to these kids for years.
I hope you're still getting that out on the trail. Are people still talking about this?
Not as much, but they still bring it up because it's an example of how leaders were cowards.
Yeah, agreed.
And when I was talking about this early on, I wasn't making it up. There was published papers showing that in models it didn't help. You looked at the European schools; they were all open. Don't they love their kids? Yeah. So they were doing what they thought was best for their families. We just didn't have the ability to talk about it because the teachers union controlled all the lever arms of the decision-making process in states like Pennsylvania. So look at the outcomes of Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, which all copycatted each other. The worst in the country by far.
Yeah.
And you compare them to southern states where governors who had a little bit more freedom about the union issues were able to do the right thing scientifically, it's not rocket science. They did much better. And yet, if you bring it up, you're censored. And that's really what got me. The fact that you were not allowed to speak what you knew to be in your heart, the truth. And then when you censor scientists, which is why I wanted Fauci fired, because when he did that, and he led that charge in many ways, and worked with legacy media to shut down dissent. That's not what we do in America. The thing that worried me a lot, especially, was I had corporate America, tech companies, media companies, and the government working together.
Yeah, everybody.
Totalitarian governments use those same mechanisms, and I wasn't going to tolerate it. And if it was just COVID, it would be one thing. But the same thing happened in energy policy, which for me is a big deal because Pennsylvania's an energy state. My goodness, the Green New Deal is a lie. There's not a single scientist you'll find who thinks that's achievable. And to do it, by the way, the timeline offered is impossible, but you also have to sell yourself to China. There's no way to do this.
And that's what's happening.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that doesn't make us any safer. If you really want to make us our environment healthier, use natural gas, which we have done and dramatically reduced our carbon footprint. You can't say it. And I go to the energy company and say, guys, where are you? Stick up for yourselves. Don't let someone else do it for you. Stop funding campaigns. You personally go out and do it. Because right now, my opponent, John Fetterman, says he wants to weaponize law enforcement to go after the executives of energy companies, arguing that these guys are gouging us. I said, could you understand that the prices of energy went up because you stopped drilling? You've intimidated companies to not building pipelines. You tell them that if they try to do anything that allows energy to be transported, you're going to have some activist lawyer get in their face and shut it down after hundreds of millions of dollars of investment. Make noise. Stick up for yourself.
I think it might be the case that a guy who lived in his parents' basement until he was 50 years old may not have the best handle on markets.
Speaking of cowards who don't tell the truth, as you mentioned earlier, the guy got a house from his sister for $1.
$1.
That's right.
$1 American dollar.
He attacked you for months about being successful and owning multiple properties, and then it turns out this guy owns a bunch of properties, and he can send really fancy tweets from that his Zoomer Twitter manager sends. But the guy's clearly a liar. I mean, how do you react to that?
He's running personal attacks on me because that's the best he's got. And I attack him on policies because he said things that are so reprehensible, you cannot help but look up at the screen when you start hearing him try to defend himself. And as an example, and I'll just, there's this issue of taxes, right? So he's raised taxes. He wants to raise more taxes. He's supported the Biden tax raise. And yet he has not paid his own taxes 67 times.
Yeah.
Now, you can't make this up. Do any of you have any tax liens, by the way? I'm curious.
Sadly, no.
Not currently.
No. I didn't even know that, what the heck is just pay your taxes? Are you kidding me? Whatever the rules are, just try to follow them. This guy thinks he's above the law, above other people. His behavior continually puts him in a whole separate class where it doesn't bother him. And when he's asked about it, he said it slipped through the cracks.
67 times.
Yeah. I mean, what else is going to slip through the cracks?
It's a lot of cracks.
Exactly. And there's no defense. There's no, acknowledgement. He's had other things in his life he's done, and multiple transgressions where he's done things and he's not really held accountable to them. But he's been lying most recently about his health. And as a physician, I have tremendous empathy for him because he's going through a very difficult time. He has heart failure and irregular heartbeats and the stroke that he says almost killed him. But he's not really been transparent about any of this. And he kept arguing that he's healthy and he just doesn't want to debate. So if that's the case, you don't want to debate because you don't want to defend these radical far left ideas. However, if you're sick and you can't debate, then you're a liar because you've been saying that you're okay.
And he should have disclosed this condition, and for years apparently he's refused to follow his doctor's orders and take medication that's been prescribed to him for years, and he's lied about this as an elected official.
And when he got sick right before the primary, they didn't disclose that in the timeline fashion they're supposed to. He's also lieutenant governor, so you're actually obliged to do this.
He needs to tell the people.
Well, it's just profoundly irresponsible. And, for a candidate to basically try to stiff arm these debates until thousands and thousands of people have already voted, I don't know how that's a election.
It's completely dishonest.
You spoke about being accountable to the voters. Well, if they're voting and you refuse to get on that stage and have a debate about who you are and what you stand for, I mean, how can you be a candidate for office? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the point you're making, right?
But let me broaden it more. It's not just about Fetterman, and I do 100% feel the frustration of insulted voters in Pennsylvania, that they're not allowed to hear this man respond to questions. By the way, it's not just debate questions. He doesn't answer questions from press.
Yeah.
Doesn't answer questions from voters. When he goes out on the campaign trail, he'll speak for 5 minutes. He rarely goes out. It's like once a week. He'll go out, speak for 5 minutes, takes no questions, and runs away. So what does that say about democracy? Broaden it here. What if you can get someone elected who never had to answer a question for what they have said in their past ever? And you can manufacture them like Max Headroom, right? This hologram, right? That you create a vision, right? That a voter might want to have if they were a Democratic candidate. And now, because you don't have to go out and make mistakes because you don't get asked questions, you stay pristine the whole time. It's a fascinating challenge to democracy.
It's like a half step more than what they did with Joe Biden.
Yeah, right.
Yes,
Right.
but it's a full step towards what I think would be catastrophic.
Yeah, I
was
agree.
if somehow he pulls this out. And I'm doing everything I can to make sure we win. But if he pulls this out, you will not see Democratic candidates campaign anymore. Why would you waste money going out, take risks going out, when you can actually spend all your money running ads? The average person in Pennsylvania thinks this guy's moderate because they've been running ads saying he's moderate. So if they look a little deeper, they'll see the truth. But it's hard. You're being told continually that this cereal box of a candidate
Right.
is superb. All right, I'll go with that.
There is no candidate in the country where their public perception pushed by the media is more disparate from who they actually are as a politician. It's absolutely fascinating.
This guy, but I mean, just the way he presents, I just can't. The thing that I can't.
You don't know the basketball shorts.
I
hate the basketball shorts.
I hate it so much. I hate it so much. Maybe it's just like I'm super old school, where I feel like you elect people to the United States Senate.
Dress for the job you want.
Who have the capability of being successful. They've demonstrated success. They can lift other people up. They care about their community. Like a dude stumbling around outside in a hoodie and gym shorts.
To meet the president.
I mean, yeah.
That's when Joe Biden was visiting.
And that's the thing is, it doesn't say to anybody that, I'm the working Joe, I'm the average guy. No, it shows that you don't have respect for anybody.
That's what I'm saying.
You're supposed to be the people's servant. So when you show up to work, you should have respect, for these people. And he's basically, I mean, the comparison to Joe Biden, I think, is perfect. Is we've seen an example of what happens when someone hides,
Right.
and what we've ended up with, a disaster. And so this is a guy who's trying the same playbook because he needs to run a campaign of distraction, which is what he's doing. He can't, like you described, the towns in Pennsylvania are suffering. You've got open air drug markets. He can't run on, this is what my party has done.
Right.
And I've done.
It's his idea. He's lieutenant governor.
Yeah.
I want to push back on the costume a little bit because it's an interesting phenomenon. I was stunned by it as well. But it turns out that if you're a far left radical with the belief that this country is irredeemably stained, you just want to break it apart. Just bust America, crack it to its base, break it asunder, and rebuild it with your toxic ideology. That's what he stands for. When he dresses like that, it's not an accident. He's kicking authority in the balls.
Yeah.
He said, hey, I'm the man. I'll show those guys who's boss. I'm going to not allow any traditional path to succeed. Because by breaking some parts of it down, I can break it all down. That's the deeper message he's delivering. He actually gets his first speech back. Remember, he hasn't spoken to anybody for months.
Right.
Months. Right. First speech back, his main point is that he wants to bust the filibuster. Like, that's his main goal.
That's what.
And he wants to pack the Supreme Court and bring in more states. I mean, these are, please, can you just fix Pennsylvania first? Right. I mean, we got some issues here we got to deal with. And this is the kind of narrative that he's out there touting, and everyone's looking around, yeah, it sounds really big, but it's cowardly because you're arguing arrogantly that you can fix America. You can't even fix your own life. Yeah. You can't even get out of the bedroom. And it's much harder to fix yourself than the city you live in. Just deal with your own stuff. I mean, he's got a tattoo on his arm, on his right arm, the one that what you would see when you shake his hands, that used to say, I will make you hurt. All right?
That's a hell of a message.
I'll tell you how I noticed it, because he had it blacked out. Now it's just a black bar on his arm. So again, as you shake his hands, that's what you would have seen. What is that about?
I think it was like a mission statement, and he kind of accomplished it as lieutenant government.
Yeah, this is continuing to fulfill his goals.
But so you see these kinds of behaviors, and you start to dig into it. And he's done some other things, again, unlawful acts, it seems, that he doesn't apologize for. And everyone's sort of looking at him and saying, either he's got some incredible gift for changing America, or he's completely out of line with what's expected.
I mean, if you're sitting back and looking at that dude who can't speak to you, is wearing gym shorts and a hoodie, and has a record off the left-hand side of the charts, and you're like, yeah, that's my guy.
I still can't believe that the Democrats in Pennsylvania had a choice in this primary and they chose Fetterman. It's just wild.
They're apoplectic. The party was one lousy vote away from endorsing Conor Lamb.
Yeah.
They just couldn't get it over the finish line. Now they're stuck. And when it was happening, you were watching a train wreck occur if you're a Democrat, because you don't want this guy doesn't speak. Pennsylvania Democrats are conservative. There are more NRA members who are Democrats than Republicans in Pennsylvania.
Right. Wow.
There are many parts of the area, Wilkes-Barre, Scranton area.
Yeah, Luzerne County.
Luzerne County. These are conservative Democrats. They identify by their archdiocese, right?
Yeah,
They're very thoughtful, faith-based communities. They're culturally Democrats, but they're Democrats that don't see themselves in the Democratic Party anymore. Joe Biden was from up there. They'll vote with us. They will vote for me. Yeah. We're already seeing it in our polls. It's one of the reasons the polls have closed so much. Independents are preferable to me. But he's confused and muddied the landscape. And, of course, the super PAC of the Democratic Party, called the liberal media, is very willing to aid and abet and cover up.
Exactly.
I mean, why am I even talking about John Fetterman's health? If I was sick, I would have had to disclose all my records.
Oh my gosh!
I'd be doing multiple debates from my hospital bed.
You would be,
right? I'd have to do everything. I'd have no choice. And it took a lot to get people just to even focus on the fact they were being duped.
Yeah.
And I highlight again the reality. Forget about answering my questions. He has to answer voters' questions. How about the press? The gaggle that I did with press on Monday in Kensington. Right? I'm trying to talk about drugs and murders in Pennsylvania and Philadelphia in particular. And they're asking me all kinds of hard questions about the usual things they want to ask about. Topics that we don't, as Republicans, get much hay on. So I'm defending and fending off the different questions and trying to get back to my topic of crime and drugs, illegal drugs. At one point I stopped the press conference. I said, guys, you understand that what I'm doing, Fetterman has never done? Like, I do this every week. Right. He's never done this. Right. I mean, what other questions you want to ask me that I might have trouble answering that I can answer? Then you can't get the simplest question into his ears that he would be able to answer. And it's shameful that I have to make that point.
It is.
Because it's partisan when I make it. You should make it as objective protectors of America. I actually believe strongly in the importance of the First Amendment. I was in media like you are here. I think having strong media on both left and right makes our country better. I want tough questions from the press. Don't let me get away with stuff. Mm-hmm. He should have to do the same. Why would you not want that if you were in the press? What would make you think that it wasn't the right thing for us as a nation to hear both sides defend their ideas?
Perhaps they have an agenda.
I don't know. Please, you're so cynical.
I don't know, but in this case, maybe, right? He's got a truckload of people that he's literally taking to treatment.
Yeah.
And they're like, so let's hear more about abortion.
Yeah, right.
I mean, it's just you can't make it up. Meanwhile, this guy's basically filming 15-second YouTube ads, and that's the extent of his public media appearances.
Well, he doesn't worry about the drugs and the crime until you're a murderer in prison, and then he wants to let you out. Yeah. That's his intervention, his treatment.
And expunge that voting record, so we got to make sure they get back in the ballot box too. No question.
But this is a narrative that is settling now in Pennsylvania. I see it because he's starting to run ads defending his behavior, which is in politics telling in itself. But there's no question that he has much more empathy for the criminals and what they went through before they became criminals than the innocent. That's why he doesn't reach out to the families when he, aggressively pushes for paroling murderers in jail for life.
He doesn't even ask for their opinion on it.
It goes against their opinions.
Yeah.
And there's this famous case of Faulkner is the name of the police officer. He was murdered in cold blood by Abu Jamal, a person who's in jail now. And this is a very hot topic in Pennsylvania because everyone knows the story. There was a young officer killed, and his widow has been quite vocal this week, actually, about the fact that she thinks what Fetterman has done, some of the actions he's taken, some of the appointees he's made to the parole board or nominations for those are made with great disrespect to her slain husband. And of course, when the FOP endorsed me, they didn't just endorse me, it was unanimous.
Yeah.
You know how hard it is to get hundreds of cops, leaders, police chiefs to all be unanimous?
Across the state of Pennsylvania.
Yeah. And I'll tell you one of the reasons it happened. You can't orchestrate this. And this is the part about politics that is most fascinating because you really can't predict what's happening. You just got to be able to roll with it and be yourself. That's why you have to really know who you are, because you can't be yourself otherwise. So I'm sitting, and we're up in Erie, big ballroom, and literally hundreds of cops. And an African-American woman gets up in the front. I've given my little pitch, why I'm a good guy, why, I'm an immigrant's kid. I worked hard. I earned everything. I've tried to give back, and here's all the things I've done. So she gets up and does something that I could never have done for myself. She says, I'm the head of the Capitol Police Force in Harrisburg. I have never in my life, and she's getting emotional, been mistreated as badly as Fetterman has treated me and my staff. He treats us like we're what would be stuck under your shoe if you walked out of a dog park.
Oh, man.
And she just froze. She just felt so much frustration. It wasn't even anger. It was just this belief that here I am trying to make our community safer and better, and he treats me like I'm the evil force that caused the problem. And I left the room, because you have to leave the room.
Yeah.
And because
I feel like that went pretty well.
And unanimous.
Yeah.
They have so much frustration with the inability of Fetterman and far left activists like him to appreciate how difficult it is to run towards the problem.
100%.
It's right. Run towards the fire.
Yeah.
Run towards the crisis. Not everyone wants to do it, but you got to support the people who try to do it, and they're not going to get it right every time.
And I think you really touched on this when you described the situation, especially with the drug problem that's happening in Pennsylvania and with policing, is liberals have somehow adopted this idea that compassion equals enabling. That you have to allow the crime to happen. You have to allow people to succumb to addiction. You can't help them. But as a doctor, that's something that you spent your entire life doing.
Yeah. So I'm going to introduce an idea. You ready for this? It's called the drama triangle. This is true.
I can't wait to hear that.
Have you heard about this?
No.
This is really why liberals argue empathy is the best way for it. They're not really empathetic. They want a culprit. If you have a victim, by definition, you have a bully or a oppressor. They're watching this happen. They're not involved. They're not the victim. They're not the oppressor. They're the goody two-shoes watching the oppressor take advantage of the victim, and they're going to get involved, and they're going to do it by protecting the victim and attacking the oppressor. It's the same narrative over and over again. It's how they express themselves. And so I witness it all the time now. You have these, Chardonnay Antifa, we joke, right? So,
That's exactly right.
Yeah,
so
we got names for them too here.
So they come, they came in from the suburbs. They got there.
Yep.
So they're going to be upset about something. They're not sure what, but they're going to be upset about it. And then they find some victim who doesn't want to be a victim.
Yeah.
People don't want to be victims. They want to be controllers of their destiny. They want to have agency over their future. But they want these guys to be victims, so they infantilize them, right? They keep them like they're unable to do it on their own. They got to come after an oppressor. The oppressor maybe is a police officer who's trying to, take care of the community. And they're going to find something they did wrong because they got to find an oppressor, because that's their worldview.
Yeah.
And so empathy is there only to allow themselves to emote
Right.
belief,
Make themselves feel better.
exactly, about this process that they've identified in their worldview who the oppressors are. They're going to take them down, not realizing that it's not that simple. The world doesn't work that way. Not every victim, right, was put there by somebody else. Not every oppressor is doing it on purpose, or actually is an oppressor.
People actually have agency.
Right.
They make decisions.
And that complexity blows their mind.
Yeah. No, that's so
and
good.
that is actually what you're dealing with. And as I got into the race, I saw this more and more. And if you can wake people up to that, I'll tell you that I give one sort of closing statement when I give my stump speeches. And I say, listen, I played football in college, and the last words you hear before you run out in the field are the words, obviously, the national anthem. And it doesn't talk about liberty, does it? Doesn't talk about freedom. It talks about bravery, home of the brave. Because you can't be brave, right? Only once in a while. You have to always be brave. And you can't be free if you're not brave. So bravery is something you have to make innately part of who you are. And in America today, the bravest thing you might have to do is say what you see. Just call it out. Now, people aren't going to like that. They're going to shun you, censor you. They'll push it to the edge. They'll ostracize you, which is a traditional human thing we do when we don't like other people. And it's powerful and it's hurtful. But you have got to say what you see in America today. Otherwise, people are going to continue to feel like they're the only ones that are seeing what's going on. And then they feel, my goodness, what happened to the world? But if you all start to speak honestly about what we see, we'll work issues out, because we are the same family. It's America, right? I don't get up in the morning and dislike Democrats. I want to figure out what they're thinking. I want them to understand me, and together we'll address what to do with China. But if we're not willing to say what we see, then we begin to think that we're the only one who sees the truth.
Yeah.
And what I'm describing now with this drama triangle is a good example. I didn't think of that. My daughter, one of my daughters, who's a psychologist and fairly liberal on the spectrum, it was her insight. She saw it with a lot of her friends. And it turns out it's a pretty widely discussed thing within that field, but they don't say it because they don't want to get embarrassed.
Right.
So let's say it. Next time you see someone who's part of the drama triangle, call them out on it. Right?
I love it.
That's not a victim. He doesn't want to be a victim. That person's certainly not the oppressor. They're trying to help.
Listen, your message is just so perfectly resonant for the time. I have absolutely no doubt this worm is turning in this race. I mean, you can feel it, right? I mean, even from the outside, people like me who've done this long enough, you can feel when things start to change, right? And there's just no question, watching the way that you're operating, the comfortability that you have with your message vis-a-vis your opponent and their uncomfortability with almost everything that they're dealing with. Like this thing's gonna happen. And I where do we go? Where do our listeners go to help you in your campaign down the stretch?
Josh, thank you for reminding me because I always forget. And this is probably the most important thing I'll say. DrOz.com. There is, in my opinion, only one way we don't win this, and that's we get outspent 2 or 3 to 1.
Yeah.
And Democrats are pouring money into Fetterman's campaign because they want the 51st seat. I don't actually think many of them know what we just talked about. If they did, I can't imagine they give him the kind of money they're giving him.
Yeah.
We will win if I get even close. You need more money to win if you're a bad candidate. It takes a lot of money to sell something you don't have. so go to DrOz.com. Support in any way you can. We will prevail. I'll make you proud on November 8th.
Yeah, totally. And we'll keep updated with the campaign throughout and let us know if we can ever do anything here.
I love being here. God bless.
Yeah.